Cedar Grove, Indiana, was the kind of town where people left their doors unlocked and everyone knew the daily routines of their neighbors. On October 14th, 1994, a crisp autumn Friday, when the maple trees blazed crimson against a cloudless blue sky, Maxwell Bishop broke his routine. Maxwell was a creature of habit. At 42, he managed the local bank branch, lived alone in a modest two-story colonial on Maple Street, and every Friday evening, at precisely 7:15 p.m., he would walk to Donovan's bar for exactly 2 glasses of bourbon before returning home by 9:30. He was meticulous to a fault, recalled Sarah Donovan, who owned the bar with her husband Tom in 1994. You could set your watch by Max. 2 Kentucky bourbons. Neat. Never more, never less. But on that particular Friday, surveillance footage from the ATM across from Donovan's showed Maxwell walking past the bar at 7:18 p.m. without stopping. The grainy footage captured him glancing over his shoulder before continuing down Main Street toward the edge of town. It was the last confirmed sighting of Maxwell Bishop. By Monday morning, when Maxwell failed to open the Cedar Grove Savings and Loan, his assistant manager, Elaine Parker, called the police. Chief Walter Simmons found Maxwell's house undisturbed. Bed made, dishes washed, nothing missing except the clothes he'd been wearing and his wallet. His car remained in the garage. It was like he just went for a walk and vanished into thin air, Chief Simmons told the Cedar Grove Gazette a week after the disappearance. No note, no signs of struggle, no large bank withdrawals. Nothing to indicate he planned to leave. The investigation that followed was thorough by small-town standards. Search parties combed the woods beyond Main Street. Duvers checked the quarry lake outside town. Missing person bulletins were distributed across the state. Maxwell's face appeared on local news segments for several weeks, but as 1994 gave way to 1995, the active investigation cooled. Theories proliferated. Maxwell had embezzled money and fled to Mexico. He'd had a secret life and abandoned his old identity. He'd committed suicide in a location so remote his body would never be found. An audit of the bank revealed no financial irregularities. Maxwell's personal finances were equally unblemished. Friends and acquaintances described him as private but content, a man who enjoyed classical music, history books, and occasional fishing trips. No romantic entanglements, no enemies, no apparent reason to disappear. The case went cold within months, admitted retired Detective James Hartwell, who inherited the file when Chief Simmons retired in 2000. Without a body or evidence of foul play, there wasn't much to go on. People disappear sometimes, not often in places like Cedar Grove, but it happens. For years, Maxwell's disappearance became Cedar Grove's defining mystery, the topic of hushed conversations at the diner, a cautionary tale parents told teenagers about the dangers lurking beyond their safe community, and eventually the subject of an episode on an obscure true crime podcast that garnered little attention. As the decades passed, those who knew Maxwell aged or moved away. The bank where he worked merged with a national chain and relocated to a modern facility on the highway. Donovan's bar closed when Tom died in 2008. Maxwell's house changed hands twice before being demolished in 2012 to make way for a small apartment complex. Physical traces of his existence in Cedar Grove gradually disappeared, just as he had. The case file, containing interview transcripts, photographs, and a box of VHS tapes from various security cameras, gathered dust in the Cedar Grove Police Department's storage room. With each passing year, the likelihood of solving the mystery diminished. Then, in early 2023, Cedar Grove hired its first new police chief in 15 years, Meredith Carter, a 38-year-old former Chicago detective who had grown up in Cedar Grove before leaving for college. Her return to her hometown was motivated partly by a desire for a quieter life, but also by personal ghosts. I was 11 when Maxwell disappeared, Chief Carter explained. I remember how it changed the town, how parents suddenly wanted to know where their children were at all times, how people started locking their doors. It was Cedar Grove's loss of innocence. One of Carter's first initiatives was digitizing cold case files. In June 2023, she came across the box labeled Bishop Maxwell Missing Person 10-14-94. Inside, among faded photographs and handwritten notes, she found 5 VHS tapes. 4 had been viewed and logged by the original investigators. The 5th, labeled Damaged, Unusable, had apparently never been properly examined. The tape came from a security camera at Cedar Grove High School, positioned to monitor the student parking lot, but with a partial view of the road leading out of town, the direction Maxwell had been walking when last seen. According to the case notes, water damage had rendered the tape unwatchable in 1994. With today's technology, I thought we might be able to recover something, Carter said. So I sent it to a forensic lab that specializes in restoring damaged media. For months, nothing happened. The lab had a backlog, and a 29-year-old case from a small Indiana town wasn't a priority. Carter continued her work, occasionally inquiring about progress, but focusing on present-day Cedar Grove, which was dealing with increasing drug problems as the opioid crisis reached even this remote corner of America. Then, in February 2024, Carter received an email from Dr. Eliza Montgomery at the Digital Forensics Recovery Lab in Indianapolis. The message was brief but electric. "We've recovered footage from your damaged VHS. I think you need to see this." The restoration process had employed AI algorithms designed to rebuild degraded video signals, enhance contrast, and sharpen details lost to time and damage. What had been unwatchable in 1994 was now viewable, not perfectly, but enough to change everything investigators thought they knew about the night Maxwell Bishop disappeared. The original investigators weren't negligent, Carter emphasized. They simply didn't have the technology we have today. What we can see now was literally invisible then. The restored footage, time-stamped 8:03 p.m. on October 14, 1994, showed a portion of County Road 17. In it, a figure matching Maxwell's description could be seen walking along the shoulder, but he wasn't alone. 20 feet behind him, barely visible even with enhancement, was a second figure. And parked further down the road, headlights off but engine running, evidenced by a faint exhaust plume visible in the cold autumn air, was a vehicle that hadn't appeared in any previous investigation notes. Chief Carter stared at the grainy footage, the hair on her arms rising. It was like watching a ghost story unfold, she recalled. Suddenly, Maxwell wasn't a man who walked away from his life. He was potentially a victim, and someone else had been there all along, hiding in the shadows between frames. After 29 years, the investigation into Maxwell Bishop's disappearance was officially reopened. The Cedar Grove Police Department conference room had been transformed into an impromptu investigation headquarters. Crime scene photos from 1994, now digitized and reprinted, covered one wall. A timeline stretched across another, filled with more question marks than certainties. At the center of it all was a large monitor, displaying the enhanced footage from the high school security camera. Chief Meredith Carter had been staring at the same 8 seconds of video for hours, frame by frame. The figure following Maxwell was frustratingly indistinct, a shadow among shadows, gender and identity impossible to determine with certainty. "Can we get anything more from this?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Dr. Eliza Montgomery, who had driven from Indianapolis to assist personally with the case, shook her head. "We've pushed the enhancement algorithms to their limits. Any further processing would start creating artifacts. Basically, the AI would be inventing details that weren't in the original footage." "What about the vehicle?" Carter pointed to the blurry shape at the edge of the frame. "Mid-sized, American-made, probably dark-colored, but I can't give you a definitive make or model." Dr. Montgomery adjusted her glasses. "The restoration software is good, but it can't create information that wasn't captured in the first place." Carter nodded, disappointment evident in her posture. She'd hoped for a breakthrough, a clear face, a readable license plate. But reality rarely accommodated such wishes in cold case investigations. "There's something else we could try," Dr. Montgomery said hesitantly. "I've been developing an algorithm that can analyze movement patterns, the way people walk, their posture, distinctive mannerisms. If we had other footage of Cedar Grove residents from that era, we might be able to identify the second figure by their gait, even without seeing their face." Carter straightened up. "The other security tapes. We have 4 more from that night. The bank, the gas station, Donovan's bar, and the convenience store at the edge of town. Within hours, they had digitized the remaining VHS tapes. None contained direct evidence of Maxwell's disappearance, but they offered a catalogue of Cedar Grove's residents going about their Friday evening routines. Dr. Montgomery's software began analyzing every figure, creating movement profiles that could be compared to the shadowy figure on the high school tape. While the algorithm worked, Carter revisited the original case files. She reread witness statements, studied the initial search grid maps, and reviewed Maxwell's personal history. Something had been overlooked. She was certain of it. The bank audit had been thorough, but what about Maxwell's private accounts? His phone records had been checked, but what about payphones in the area? The report mentioned no signs of romantic entanglements, but had investigators dug deeply enough into his personal life? "People in small towns keep secrets," Carter murmured to herself. "Everyone has them." She decided to track down people who had known Maxwell personally. Many had passed away or moved, but a few remained in Cedar Grove. Her first stop was Elaine Parker, Maxwell's former assistant manager at the bank, now in her 70s, and living in a retirement community on the outskirts of town. "I never believed Max just walked away," Elaine said as she poured tea in her small apartment. "He loved this town. He loved his job. He wasn't the type to abandon his responsibilities." "Was there anything unusual about his behavior in the days before he disappeared?" Carter asked. Elaine's hands trembled slightly as she set down the teapot. "There was one thing. It seemed insignificant at the time. The Tuesday before he vanished, Max received a phone call at the bank. He took it in his office, but I could see him through the glass partition. His face went white, like he'd seen a ghost. When he came out, he said he wasn't feeling well and went home early. It was the only time in 7 years I ever saw him leave before closing." "Did he mention who called?" "No, but afterward he was different, distracted, checking his watch constantly, looking over his shoulder." Elaine paused. "I told the police back then, but they seemed to think it wasn't important." Carter made notes. "Anything else you remember? Any conflicts with customers? Problems with loans or foreclosures?" Elaine shook her head, then hesitated. "Well, there was that business with the Whitaker property." "What property?" "The old Whitaker farm on the north side of town. The family wanted to sell after the father died, but there was some dispute about the mortgage. Max handled it personally. It was all very hush-hush, bank confidentiality and all that. But there were rumors about improper documentation, possibly even forgery. Nothing was ever proven." Carter jotted down Whitaker Farm in her notebook. "Who owns the property now?" "Horizon Development. They bought it around 2000, built that big complex of condominiums, the Woods, they call it." Back at the station, Carter ran a background check on Horizon Development. The company had been founded in 1997 by Robert Chambers, a former real estate attorney from Indianapolis who had moved to Cedar Grove in 1993. Before the Whitaker property, Horizon had developed several smaller projects in neighboring counties. "Robert Chambers," Carter muttered, typing the name into the department's database. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. She widened her search to include newspaper archives and found a photograph from 1998. Chambers at a Chamber of Commerce dinner, shaking hands with the mayor. Something about his face triggered a memory. She returned to the digitized security footage from 1994. The tape from Donovan's bar showed the interior from behind the counter. Carter scanned through it until she found the timestamp corresponding to when Maxwell would normally have arrived, 7:15 p.m. He wasn't there, confirming he had indeed broken his routine. But at a corner table, partially obscured by other patrons, sat a man whose profile looked remarkably like a younger Robert Chambers. Carter was still processing this discovery when Dr. Montgomery called. "I've got a potential match on the gait analysis," she said, excitement evident in her voice. "The figure following Maxwell on the high school tape has the same movement pattern as someone captured on the convenience store footage approximately 20 minutes earlier." "Can you identify them?" Carter asked, her heart racing. "Not definitively, but it's a man about 6 feet tall, with a slight limp favoring the right leg." Carter checked the convenience store footage. The timestamp read 7:42 p.m. A man entered, purchased cigarettes, and left without removing his baseball cap or looking directly at the camera. But as he turned to exit, his profile was briefly visible. "Dr. Montgomery," Carter said slowly, "I need you to compare this man's profile with a photograph I'm sending you right now." She emailed the Chamber of Commerce photo showing Robert Chambers. Minutes later, Dr. Montgomery called back. "It's a 93% match, accounting for aging and image quality. I'd testify to that in court." Carter felt a chill run down her spine. Robert Chambers had been at Donovan's bar when Maxwell should have been there. 20 minutes later, a man matching Chambers' profile was at the convenience store near the road where Maxwell was last seen. And shortly after that, the high school camera captured someone with the same distinctive gait following Maxwell out of town. But why would a real estate attorney stalk and potentially harm a bank manager? What was the connection? The answer came from an unexpected source. While searching property records related to the Whitaker farm, Carter discovered that the original deed had been held in a trust managed by Cedar Grove Savings and Loan, specifically by Maxwell Bishop. Further digging revealed that the farm sat atop valuable limestone deposits, a fact that became public only after Horizon Development acquired the property. The timing was suspicious. Maxwell disappears in 1994. 3 years later, Chambers forms Horizon Development. By 2000, he's acquired the Whitaker property and begun developing it, eventually making millions from both the condominiums and the limestone mining rights. "Follow the money," Carter whispered, an old detective's adage that had proven reliable throughout her career. She obtained a warrant to access Chambers' financial records from 1994. The bank statements showed a large cash withdrawal, $50,000, on October 13th, the day before Maxwell disappeared. On October 20th, 1 week after the disappearance, Chambers had deposited $30,000 in cash into a different account. It wasn't proof, but it was enough for Carter to bring Chambers in for questioning. First, though, she needed more leverage, something that might crack his composure and lead to a confession. She returned to the evidence box and found something she had initially overlooked: Maxwell's pocket calendar, recovered from his desk at the bank. On October 14th, 1994, there was a notation: RC 8 p.m. WF RC Robert Chambers 8 p.m. The time Maxwell was captured on the high school camera walking out of town, WF Whitaker Farm. Maxwell hadn't deviated from his routine by chance that night. He had deliberately skipped his regular visit to Donovan's because he had a meeting scheduled, a meeting at a remote property with the man who would later profit from its development, a meeting that coincided exactly with the last time Maxwell Bishop was ever seen alive. Carter stared at the calendar, her fingers tracing the faded ink of Maxwell's handwriting. "What happened out there?" she whispered. "And what else might be hidden in the evidence we've had all along?" Robert Chambers' office overlooked the woods development he'd built on the former Whitaker farm. At 67, he projected success, silver-haired, tan, and dressed in understated luxury. When Chief Carter arrived with a warrant, Chambers greeted her with practiced charm. "Chief Carter, what a surprise. How can I help our local law enforcement today?" "I'd like to discuss Maxwell Bishop," Carter replied, watching his expression. Something flickered in Chambers' eyes, brief but unmistakable: fear. "Maxwell Bishop? That's a name I haven't heard in years." Chambers gestured toward a seating area. "The banker who disappeared, right? Tragic situation. You knew him. Ooh, Cedar Grove was a small town back then. Everyone knew everyone. Chambers smiled thinly, but I wouldn't say we were acquainted beyond occasional banking transactions. Carter placed Maxwell's pocket calendar on the coffee table. Then perhaps you could explain why Mr. Bishop had a meeting scheduled with you at the Whitaker farm on the night he disappeared. The color drained from Chambers' face. I'm afraid you're mistaken. I never met with Maxwell that night. We have footage of you at Donovan's bar at 7:15 p.m. when Maxwell typically would have been there. We have you on camera at the convenience store at 7:42 p.m. And most importantly, we have enhanced footage showing someone with your exact gait following Maxwell toward the Whitaker property at 8:03 p.m. Chambers' composure cracked. That's circumstantial. You can't identify someone from their walk. Modern technology is remarkable, Mr. Chambers, almost as remarkable as your financial transactions surrounding Maxwell's disappearance. Carter produced his bank records. A $50,000 cash withdrawal the day before, a $30,000 deposit a week later. Care to explain? Chambers stood abruptly. This conversation is over. Contact my attorney. That's your right, Carter acknowledged, but we've obtained a warrant to search the original Whitaker property with ground-penetrating radar, technology that wasn't available in 1994. Chambers' face went ashen as realization dawned. That evening, Carter received a call from Agnes Whitaker, now 92, and living in Cedar Grove Senior Living Community. I should have spoken up years ago, Agnes began, when Carter visited her. After my husband died, Maxwell was helping us sort out mortgage confusion. He discovered someone had altered the loan documents, increased the amount we owed, changed the terms. It would have forced us to sell the farm for much less than it was worth. And that someone was Chambers. Agnes nodded. Maxwell found evidence. He confronted Chambers, who offered him money to look the other way. Maxwell refused and threatened to report him to the banking commission. When was this? Early October 1994. Maxwell promised he would help us save the farm. Then he disappeared, and suddenly all those documents disappeared too. 3 months later, we lost the farm. Robert Chambers' company bought it through a shell corporation. Did Maxwell mention any specific evidence he had gathered? He said he had recorded a conversation with Chambers, admitting to the fraud. Maxwell had one of those small tape recorders, said he kept it in his desk at the bank. Did Maxwell mention where on your property he was meeting Chambers that night? The old well house, Agnes replied. It was private, away from the road. Maxwell went there to record him trying to bribe a bank official. The next morning, Cedar Grove's police force searched the undeveloped portion of the former Whitaker farm with ground-penetrating radar. By mid-morning, they found a subsurface anomaly approximately 6 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 4 feet deep. The excavation revealed fragments of weathered fabric, then a leather wallet containing Maxwell Bishop's driver's license. By afternoon, they had uncovered a complete skeleton matching Maxwell's height, with a skull fracture consistent with blunt force trauma. Beside the remains lay a corroded microcassette recorder. The forensic team carefully secured it for transport to the lab, where technicians managed to recover a portion of the recording. Told you to drop it, Maxwell. The offer is more than generous. It's fraud, Robert. You falsified legal documents. I can't be part of that. Everyone has their price. Not me. I'm going to the banking commission on Monday. You're making a serious mistake. The mistake was thinking you had any decency. Now, the recording also captured a faint rhythmic sound in the background, mechanical clicking like a watch. From the case files, Carter knew Maxwell's vintage Omega wristwatch had never been found. Through watch collector forums, she obtained a recording of an identical model with its distinctive tick pattern caused by a mechanical flaw. The lab confirmed a match. The ticking on the tape came from Maxwell's watch. With this evidence, along with the enhanced security footage, the financial records, and Agnes Whitaker's testimony, Carter had enough for an arrest warrant. But when officers arrived at Chambers' residence, he was gone. His passport missing, and his private plane departed at 2:15 a.m. As Carter updated the investigation board, adding "fugitive" beneath Chambers' photograph from the Woods' grand opening in 2000, she noticed something odd. In the image, Chambers wore an expensive suit with a distinctive watch peeking from beneath his cuff, an Omega identical to Maxwell's. "Trophy," Carter whispered. Chambers hadn't just killed Maxwell. He'd kept his prized possession, wearing it openly. As she added the watch detail to the international bulletins, her phone rang. The lab's facial recognition software had been comparing the enhanced security footage with Cedar Grove's archives and found another match, one that complicated everything. The shadowy figure following Maxwell hadn't been alone. Enhanced images revealed a third person at the scene, previously undetected, and the program had just identified them with 98% certainty. "I need to go back to the Whitaker property," Carter told her deputy. "I think we're going to find more than one body." Dawn broke over Cedar Grove as the forensic team returned to the Whitaker property. This time, they focused on an area 30 yards east of the original excavation site, near where the old farm's storage shed had once stood. The ground-penetrating radar operator moved methodically, his eyes fixed on the screen. "I've got something," he announced after 20 minutes. "Similar dimensions to yesterday's find, approximately 4 feet down." The excavation was painstaking. By noon, they had uncovered human remains, a second skeleton smaller than Maxwell's, but with the same fatal head trauma. Female, early to mid-30s, the forensic anthropologist noted. Been in the ground approximately 3 decades, same time frame as our first victim. Carter stared at the remains, a cold certainty settling in her stomach. "I need dental records for Linda Morales." The name drew surprised looks from her team. Linda Morales had been a loan officer at Cedar Grove Savings and Loan in 1994, working directly under Maxwell Bishop. According to the original case files, she had resigned abruptly 2 days after Maxwell's disappearance, leaving a brief note citing family emergency before apparently relocating to Arizona. Only no one in Arizona had ever heard of her. The address she'd provided led nowhere. Her social security number had never been used again. Her bank accounts remained untouched. For all practical purposes, Linda Morales had ceased to exist on October 16, 1994. "You think she was involved?" Deputy Jackson asked, as they waited for the dental records. "The facial recognition matched her to our third figure on the tape," Carter explained. "And in the original investigation, witnesses mentioned seeing Maxwell and Linda having an intense discussion the week before he disappeared. By evening, the dental records confirmed it. The second body was Linda Morales." Back at the station, Carter assembled the puzzle pieces on her investigation board. The enhanced security footage now told a clear story. Maxwell walking toward the Whitaker farm, followed by Chambers with Linda Morales trailing further behind. She must have known about the fraud, Carter theorized. Maybe she was even helping Chambers alter the documents. When Maxwell discovered it, she had as much to lose as Chambers did. A search of Linda's former apartment, now occupied by new tenants, revealed nothing. However, the building's elderly superintendent remembered something odd from 1994. The day after she supposedly left town, a man came to clean out her apartment. Said he was her brother, but Linda had mentioned once she was an only child. The superintendent's description matched Robert Chambers. With this new information, the prosecutor's office approved an expanded search warrant for Chambers' residence. In a hidden wall, safe behind a bookshelf, officers discovered a file labeled simply WF. Inside were the original, unaltered Whitaker farm loan documents, proving the fraud Maxwell had uncovered. Also in the safe, a woman's gold locket containing a photo of Linda Morales with her parents, another trophy from his victims. 3 days later, Interpol located Robert Chambers at a small coastal villa in Portugal. He was wearing Maxwell's Omega watch when agents took him into custody. Chambers' extradition process began immediately, but Cedar Grove wouldn't wait for his return to begin healing. A memorial service was held for Maxwell Bishop and Linda Morales, attended by nearly the entire town. Agnes Whitaker sat in the front row, finally witnessing justice for the man who had tried to help her family. After the service, as residents gathered at the community center, Dr. Montgomery approached Chief Carter with her tablet.
If you want to hear the rest of this story, please leave a comment on this video and subscribe.